Hello, my name is Denise Miller, and I am the mother to 2-year-old Woodrow. I want to first and foremost thank my Congresswoman, Debbie Lesko, for organizing this briefing, and to all of you for taking time to be with us today. Woodrow was diagnosed with NPC at just 3 months of age. Early this year, he began to decline very rapidly. His doctors recommended an existing experimental treatment that many other NPC patients have taken safely for over a decade. For reasons that I still can't understand, we were refused access to that medication. Meanwhile, at the same hospital in my community that recommended Woodrow's treatment, there was another NPC child receiving that exact same medication. Throughout our country, almost every other NPC patient seeking treatment was receiving it, except for Woodrow and a few other newly diagnosed infants and toddlers. We felt abandoned. Woodrow had stopped crawling. He was falling down multiple times a day, causing injury. He had begun to choke on every meal, and he had stopped saying the few words that he had been saying. As if the diagnosis of this terrible disease wasn't bad enough, we were terrified that we might not gain access to treatment. Thanks to Congresswoman Lesko and my senators, Woodrow is now on Adra-Betadex. He is now stable and thriving, even getting stronger. He's saying words and he's able to eat safely once again. But unfortunately, this story is not over. The next chapter is being written. Our family remains in crisis. Woodrow could lose this treatment at any time. That means we would lose him and fast. We need help to save access to our medicines that Woodrow and all NPC patients alike so desperately need. Thank you for your help, Representative Lesko, and the help of everybody listening today.
Thank you, Denise. Congresswoman Lesko.
Well, hi, Denise. It's great to see you virtually. Too bad we can't see each other again in person. And I'm so glad to hear that Woodrow is doing well. I want to thank all of the Congress members or their staff members that are on this call. It's such an important issue. And you just heard from Denise Miller about the situation with her son and how she wasn't able to get the medicine that was needed, and now she does. And of course, the video showed all the other children that need the medicine. So I'm honored to serve on, to work with Congresswoman Sewell on this, and I thank her for involvement. I thank the families that are on this call and involved advocating for their children. Working together, I think we can solve this problem. I'm also a member of the Rare Disease Caucus here in Congress. I think it's important that all of us in Congress work for the welfare of all of our constituents, including constituents that have rare diseases, including NPC. So again, thank you, Denise. Thank you, Congress members, staff members of the Congress members, and all the families for being here. And I'm sorry I have to run out, but I'm in the middle of a congressional hearing, so I have to go. But I honestly pray for you and wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much. Now we'll hear from Kayla Miller from Alabama and mom to Cameron to introduce Congresswoman Sewell.
My name is Kayla Miller Smith. I want to thank Congresswoman Sewell for caring about my daughter Cameron and all of our NPC families. We're just moms and dads with kids who are born with a rare and fatal disease. We never expected to be having to talk to Congress, but we found ourselves in an impossible situation where there are existing therapies that our kids need, but we could lose access to at any time. We need your help. Our voices aren't being heard. We're fighting a fatal disease in a system that is failing these patients. Today's NPC generation deserves continued access to existing therapies and a reliable pathway to multiple therapies to ensure the best chance of slowing progression and improving quality of life. Thank you all for being here today, and thank you, Congresswoman Sewell, for supporting our efforts for NPC.
And Congresswoman Sewell. If we it looks like we might need to do that. Oh,
Thank you, Kayla, for your kind introduction and for your fierce advocacy on behalf of your daughter, Cameron. I want to let everyone on today's briefing know that we're here to listen and to help. Kayla has shared with me the incredibly difficult journey that she and her daughter, Cameron, have been on because of NPC. Their journey has only been made more difficult by the barriers that they have faced in maintaining steady access to the treatments that offer Cameron the best possible outcome. I am here because of Kayla and Cameron, and that they deserve our full attention.
thank you again to our congressional hosts. Thank you to all of you who are being patient with our technology. And now let me introduce Sarah McLaughlin from California.
Hi, I'm the mom of Marian McLaughlin, who has NPC. She's 6 years old, and my name is Sarah. Marian's been treated with an experimental NPC medicine for 4.5 years, but she could lose her medicine at any minute. We're not here to ask Congress to debate science, but we do need your help to get our voices understood and fix this, because sacrificing her and waiting years for another placebo-controlled clinical trial is not acceptable for my daughter Marian or for any NPC patients. An entire generation of lives with NPC depends on keeping access to these existing medicines. For Marian, her serious NPC symptoms appeared right away. Just a few months after she was born, she had significant muscle weakness and she would choke on her food. She was underweight and she slept too much. She had low energy, and an MRI showed signs of early neurological degeneration, but we didn't know why. Shortly after this, we got the answer. Niemann pick type C, and she was 18 months old. I emailed many doctors, doctor after doctor, asking, can you help my baby? And I learned of some clinical trials, but she was far too young. But Dr. Barry Kravis, who you will meet next, said yes. And it is because of an expanded access program to an experimental medicine for Marian aggravated X that she is alive today. Marian began treatment only 6 weeks after her NPC diagnosis, and the medicine is given through a lumbar puncture or an injection into her lower back every other Friday at Children's Hospital, Los Angeles. After beginning treatment, Marian got the strength to stand independently, to walk and climb, and eventually, and with a lot of excitement, to jump. Her weight and energy rebounded. She stopped choking. And we know it's this medicine that's working because it is the only one she takes. She's now in kindergarten. She has a best friend. She takes ballet and gymnastics, and her doctors, every single one, are blown away at how well this medicine works for her. This does not happen with this disease. And this should be the end of the story, but it's not. On January 20th of this year, I got an email that shattered our lives again. The drug company told us that while individuals may be benefiting, they can't show benefit, quote, at a group level, and quote, this is the end, and quote, it's over. All patients were to stop receiving the medicine as soon as possible by October 20th, 2021 at the absolute latest, if you could even get permission to stay on it that long, which wasn't a guarantee. And no new patients could start the drug ever. I knew this was wrong. I collected letters from doctors and neurological experts, all testifying to the drug's efficacy for Marian. I spent hours and hours on the phone with other NPC moms who were all in the same shock. And we all said the same thing. Our kids are living proof that this medicine works. This email is why Woodrow couldn't get treatment, but as you heard, after months of heroic efforts, he was finally allowed to begin. But it wasn't just Woodrow. Only weeks later, a 7-year-old girl named Reagan, newly diagnosed and losing abilities, was also caught in this regulatory chaos. The day before her scheduled first treatment, FDA released a backdated letter placing this medicine on a partial clinical hold and again restricting access for almost all new patients. So this meant Reagan and her mom flew to her first treatment from Massachusetts to Chicago in the middle of a pandemic, filled with fear, to sit in a hospital waiting room, not even knowing if FDA would allow her to get the medicine that was sitting in the next room that she needed. At the same time in Las Vegas, 1-year-old Ethan Rubin, the youngest of 4 brothers with NPC, was caught in this same regulatory chaos. About 3 years ago, Ethan's older brother Logan had safely started the same medicine, weighing 20 pounds at 1 year old. This year, Ethan, also 20 pounds and 1 year old, also needed to start the treatment, but he couldn't. FDA now said only patients who were in their first few years of life, but also weighed 22 pounds could get the medicine. And there is no explanation. He was forced to wait, giving NPC more time to harm him. This family, like our community, has suffered enough. It is enough. The system designed to protect our children is failing them. And we have all seen, especially this last year, that our government and industry can work together to advance science of new treatments and treat patients at the same time. We can do both. I want to be as clear as I can about what is at stake. There are 2 experimental medicines that NPC patients are taking today that we as families and patients experience clear benefits and our doctors recommend, but we could still lose access to these medicines at any moment. If that happens, my daughter Marian's life ends. Many lives will end. There are more than 50 families with NPC on the line listening today, and we're all here to tell you the same thing. These medicines work and we need them. Please help our children and families. They make the world better. Please help them stay in it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Now let's hear from Dr. Barry Kravis.
Well, I want to thank you all for being here. Good morning. I'm Dr. Elizabeth Barry Kravis, a pediatric neurologist at Rush University in Chicago, and I've been developing treatments for rare diseases for 20 years. I oversee the Expanded Access Program that has more than 60 patients with NPC that have been treated with an important experimental treatment at sites around the country. My NPC patients face a fatal neurodegenerative disease. And during the past year, they have encountered a system that is creating barriers to access to medications that have stabilized their disease. This places them at risk of faster disease progress and loss of years of life. This is all in the midst of a pandemic during which families have to travel halfway across the country to obtain treatment for their medically fragile kids and young adults. It's inhumane and unacceptable. This year, we had a drug maker and a federal agency tell our families with NPC that there would be an expiration date on their existing treatment that was to occur this month. For these patients, an expiration date on treatment is the same as placing an expiration date on their lives. Imagine having a fatal disease and being told the treatment that you have relied upon to slow the progression of your disease for as long as 8 years would disappear in 9 months. Disappear because the company and the FDA couldn't come to consensus on what constitutes benefit. So the company was unable to find a development path and decided to sell the asset. Even though as a provider, I know there has been benefit. Patients with this disease who are actively losing neurologic function at the time they start treatment do not just magically stabilize for multiple years without a successful treatment being employed. No one can conclusively say that my patients have not benefited from this experimental treatment. In fact, I've documented their stability with many measures, and in some cases, even measurable improvements due to this treatment when it started very early in the disease, which is the best time to start it. They will only say that determining clinical benefit is too hard, and it is in this disease. So why should these patients be penalized because it's difficult to conduct clinical trials for NPC and other rare diseases under the standard trial framework? When the development path at the company was ended, access to the drug was limited, and only through the sale of the drug has it been able to be continued this month. For some patients like Woodrow, access to treatment was established because the community fought for him, and they were fortunate to have your help. But how long does that access last? We've seen children like Woodrow face challenges simply because they were diagnosed with the disease at a time when access was being limited, when they would have been able to start on the drug earlier, likely with better outcome, had they been born several years earlier or even several months earlier. There have been others since Woodrow who will need the medications, and there will be more in the foreseeable future that will have to fight to be approved for treatment. The FDA has placed my expanded access, compassionate use program under a partial clinical hold. New restrictions on age and weight have been put in place, and we must agree on a new form of measurement by next June, or once again, treatment could be terminated. Understand what that means. Woodrow and all the other patients may again lose access. I have to have a meeting with FDA to come to the required agreement about who can access treatment and how we measure benefit. Yet while we have communications from the Rare Disease Division at FDA that clearly indicate a limited knowledge of the disease, they have refused to bring subject matter experts from FDA to this meeting. How can they pursue the best science without the expertise? Have we come to this? To avoid loss of life-prolonging treatments, we have to make an appeal to Congress. We know that this is not how things should be, but without your intervention, this may become the norm. It's not for lack of trying. Our last letter from 40 NPC clinicians was sent to FDA in August. About a week ago, we finally got a reply, but this amounted to a form letter with no commitment to any kind of specific actions going forward. The bottom line is we cannot waste time that these patients do not have. We need clarity, collaboration, and action now. We need the FDA to act on the provisions of the law that you, Congress, put into place, the 20th Century Cures Act. It is not acceptable or ethical for treatments to be withheld or patients to be randomized to loss of function or death in standard trial designs, or to wait for the perfect trial. We need the FDA to work with the NIH, industry, scientists, and the patient community on new and realistic regulatory strategies endorsed by that act for ultra-rare diseases, including NPC, that will secure access, clear a path for approval, and operate on the same urgent timetable that these patients face. Thank you all for listening and for your help.
Thank you, Dr. Berry-Kravis. Now, Mihaela, mom of Vivi from Pennsylvania.
Hello, my name is Mihaela, mom to Vivi. Before I share our story, I would like to acknowledge our NPC community here today and also pay tribute to the ones that walked before us and lost their battle to this horrible disease. When our daughter was 3 years old, at the local hospital, they told me, go home and enjoy your child. She won't live to see her 10th birthday. Be prepared, because by 7 years old, she'll be wheelchair bound, nonverbal, and tube fed. Can you imagine? Vivi, however, is now almost 11 years old, and she's been taking medicine for NPC for 6 years. We should be celebrating this milestone. Instead, I am here because I fear every day that Vivi will lose access for the second time to the treatment that she needs. She isn't being treated like the vivacious, beautiful person that she is. She's being tossed around like she doesn't count or matter, or she only counts for her data set, not for her life. In 2015, I found a trial for NPC, but Vivi at 4 was too young for the IT cyclodextrin clinical trial at NIH. Other patients with NPC were already receiving this medication through compassionate use for years, and they were seeing good results. Thankfully, NIH was flexible and our journey began. Vivi became the youngest patient in the trial. The transformation that Vivi went through was amazing. She went from stuttering badly to speaking 2 languages perfectly, and her cataplexy was gone. We continued with this treatment for 5 years, but that was about to change when in January 2021, the same bomb that was dropped on Sarah and Marian also affected Vivi and I. But in our case, the explosion was immediate. We lost access to the drug right away, the drug that kept Vivi's disease stable for 5 years. It was in the middle of a pandemic, and extended access was not an option for us. We knew we could not let Vivi go untreated. That will mean the end of her life. I immediately began trying to enroll her into another experimental drug for NPC called arimoclomol, which had shown promising results. Switching experimental medicine meant having to go through a 5-week washout period where Vivi will get no treatment. 5 weeks might not sound like a lot, but NPC can do a lot of damage in that short time, and it did to Vivi. Our beautiful girl began falling a lot. Her speech was badly impaired, and her cataplexy was back. Carefree giggles were now causing sudden loss of muscle tone and her body to collapse. In March 2021, she was finally able to start her new medicine. After 3 months on this new therapy, Vivi started improving in most areas, talking better and walking steadier. We thought we could finally breathe, but in June, FDA rejected arimoclomol, and once again, we faced the possibility that Vivi could lose her treatment. How can this be happening again? The company that makes arimoclomol says they continue to evaluate the path forward in US following the recent FDA response. That language is frankly similar to what the company with her first medication was saying a year ago. That medication is still in danger. Both of this medication that Vivi was on helped in different ways. They both work. Vivi is a compassionate, independent, beautiful, sweet girl, but most importantly, she is alive. But the current system is treating her like a guinea pig and part of a generation that can be sacrificed for the next. Our greatest fear as parents is losing Vivi to NPC when effective medication exists, but she's denied access to it. The system is failing us. It already happened once. Please don't let it happen again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mihaela. And now we'll hear from Dr. Patterson.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to participate today, and particularly I'd like to thank the families for their courage in telling their stories, which is extraordinarily difficult and moving, and to the members of Congress for their interest and support. My name is Mark Patterson. I'm a child neurologist at Mayo Clinic, and I've been privileged to care for patients with Niemann-Pick disease type C for more than 30 years, and I've been involved in many clinical trials aimed at developing effective therapies for this disorder. You've heard powerful testimony concerning the consequences of poorly informed decisions by the FDA from parents whose children experience the ravages of this disease daily. These families, who are the heart of the NPC community, have consistently stepped up to support clinical research studies. This includes participation in natural history studies, which offer no prospect of benefit, and randomized clinical trials, in which children who receive a placebo also have no prospect of benefit while the disease continues to progress. Their reasonable expectation is that positive results from these studies will lead to the availability of safe and effective therapies. This expectation has not been met because the Food and Drug Administration has not yet risen to the challenge of expediting the approval of safe and effective therapies for ultra-rare diseases, despite the fact that the Congress passed legislation, the 21st Century Cures Act, a decade ago, that recognizes the challenges inherent in studying these diseases and which provides the tools that the agency needs to accelerate the approval of safe and effective drugs. We all have great respect for the role of the FDA in ensuring the safety and efficacy of drugs approved in the United States and for the integrity of its officials. But we are deeply concerned that the agency is wedded to an outdated approach requiring large-scale, double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled trials. This model has worked well for common diseases, but in 2021, in NPC, it is no longer feasible nor ethical in this lethal, ultra-rare disease. Despite the challenges that you have heard about, the NPC community has worked together to develop instruments to measure disease progression and to execute clinical trials, but the agency has resisted the acceptance of strong scientific evidence published in the peer-reviewed literature, strongly supporting the safety and efficacy of multiple agents to treat this disease. As one striking example you just heard about, a positive, double-blind, randomized controlled trial for arimoclomol was successfully completed in the face of the global COVID-19 pandemic, thanks to the dedication and sacrifice of NPC children and families, but the statistically significant, clinically meaningful results have not been accepted by the agency. In fact, the agency decided shortly before it was due to render a decision on a new drug application and years after the trial was completed, not to accept the outcome measure, the 5-domain NPC clinical severity score, even though this had been agreed upon by the sponsors and the agency well in advance of the initiation of the trial. This measure is widely accepted in the community, and data demonstrating its reliability and clinical meaningfulness have been published in the peer-reviewed scientific literature. We cannot expect families to participate in clinical trials or sponsors to design, fund, and execute them if the goalposts are moved at the last minute by an agency which offers no transparency, accountability, or indeed any firm commitment when designing and executing such clinical trials. It is very clear from our frequent interactions with the agency that its officials do not understand progressive neurodegenerative disease in children. It would be unreasonable to expect the officials of the FDA, who do not practice medicine and often have little, if any, clinical experience, to have knowledge of all of the thousands of ultra-rare diseases. But they must be prepared to listen to scientific experts and families who understand these diseases best. If the agency is concerned that those of us who participate in clinical trials have conflicts of interest, then by all means, bring in similarly qualified child neurologists, developmental pediatricians, or other pediatric subspecialists who understand these diseases and who can provide the critical knowledge that they lack. Yet the agency resists doing this. I must emphasize that we are not asking the agency to accept anecdotal evidence. We have presented them with hard scientific data published in the peer-reviewed literature, but the agency remains resistant to accepting such data. This is a critical point. It is true that there is no clinical study for which fault cannot be found, but the perfect is the enemy of the good. When we are dealing with a highly variable, ultra-rare disease, every piece of information about patients should be regarded as precious, irreplaceable, and forming a critical part of the comprehensive picture of the disease. Children and adults with this disease do not have the years that would be required to execute the repeated studies that the agency continues to demand. We have strong data supporting the safety and effectiveness of several agents to treat Niemann-Pick disease type C. Multiple listening sessions have been held with the FDA, and a very clear and consistent message has been sent by members of this community that we need multiple treatment options to individualize effective therapy for people afflicted by this highly variable disease. The risk is small, the potential benefit is great. We cannot and must not wait years to provide access to much needed therapies in this community. I'd like to make another important point. NPC is but one of many thousands of rare diseases. Thanks to the genetic revolution, their numbers are increasing daily. Our improved understanding of these disorders is also beginning to inform our understanding of so-called common diseases. In fact, many of these are likely families of rare diseases. Consider common developmental syndromes such as autism spectrum disorder, adult onset dementia such as Alzheimer and related diseases, and even common but costly disorders such as migraine, all of which are likely families of rare diseases. It is essential for everyone in our society that we have an efficient, equitable, accountable, and transparent process to approve treatments that are effective and made available for all patients at a level of risk that is acceptable to the community. We need Congress's help to ensure that we have an FDA that is functioning in the 21st century to implement the 21st Century Cures Act passed by Congress a half a decade ago. Time has already run out for too many children and families afflicted by this terrible disease. We must not lose one more life to delays originating in an outdated, opaque, unaccountable, and inefficient system. Thank you again for your time, attention, and support.
Thank you, Dr. Patterson. And now we'll hear from Kara Gilmore from Pennsylvania.
Hello, I'm Kara Gilmore. I've lived in Pennsylvania with my partner Bradley. I have NPC, but my story is very different than the ones you just heard. I recently celebrated my 43rd birthday. Until a few years ago, I was focused on building my life, finished college, started my career in New York City, put money in my 401k, earned an MBA, traveled a lot, bought a house. Then in my 30s, I started noticing I was becoming clumsier and couldn't walk as well in high-heeled shoes the way I used to. Over the next few years, it got worse and more frequent. Doing Pilates and walking long distances was more difficult. Messy handwriting and decreased alcohol tolerance. I chalked these symptoms up to getting older, being out of shape, or being tired or stressed. Then I began experiencing tremors. It took close to 2 years before I had a confirmed diagnosis of NPC, which is considered a short diagnostic journey for adult onset. Today I'm lucky. The disease has not affected my cognition. I use a rolling walker and I talk a lot slower now. I no longer drive. I enjoy scooting instead of hiking. This progression may seem slow to observers, but believe me, as a patient, it does not seem slow. I've been fortunate to receive arimoclomol through Boston Children's Early Access Program, starting in August 2020. After progressing regularly on a quarterly basis, I've been stable for the past year. My tremors are under control. I have more energy. My speech and swallowing have improved. I walk faster and steadier. This has been critical to the quality of my life, allowing me to continue to work full-time, engage in social activities with my friends and family, and maintain independence. I'm trying to live my best life despite this disease. I'm sure that my disease would be further progressed without arimoclomol. I know I have fatal disease, but I'm still hopeful. Not only that this drug will be an approved treatment, but for treatments and even a cure to come. I want to be here for that. Because the FDA elected to not approve arimoclomol, despite the positive trial results, I'm worried that its fate will be that of like the other treatments. Before going on arimoclomol, I would go to bed fearing that when I woke in the morning, I wouldn't be able to get out of bed. Now I go to bed fearing that this drug will no longer be available to me. I know that if we work together, patients, scientists, industry, and government, we can address the challenges faced by the NPC community. Time is not on our side. We need certainty about our continued ability to access these treatments. We're a generation of patients moving forward with the science. Please don't sacrifice our lives. I thank each of you for taking the time out of your day to learn about NPC and the challenges of our community.